Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mic Drop Show. Hey, before I jump into things this morning, boy, let me ask you a question. You ever find yourself in one of those seasons where you go, holy crap, what else? It's interesting how those things come up in our life and how things like that will happen in our life. What matters most though, and what I've found over time is how you respond to those situations and how you react to those things that come up. So I would ask you, if you're in one of those seasons right now in your life, as we kind of are in the real estate space, how are you responding? How are you reacting? How are you acting or behaving in that space? Ask yourself, are you doing everything that you could be doing, or are you picking up the pieces and moving forward, or just, a lot of people have just said, hey, I quit. Well, this isn't really a season to quit in. I think we're right at the beginning. Hey, I'm Mike Morawski, and today we're going to be talking about life. We're going to be talking about seasons. We're going to be talking about traffic, and not the kind of traffic on the freeway, because that could put you in a season of its own. The kind that's happening in your life. Because here's what I've noticed. Everybody complains about being stuck, right? Stuck in business, stuck in investing, stuck in their career, stuck in their finances, stuck in their life. They'll tell you that they're caught in traffic. Really, that's just those seasons that we go through. And you could just be in one of those seasons right now. But when you take a closer look, they're not stuck in traffic. They're driving in circles, going around and around. There's a big difference there. Traffic is when something outside of you controls you, slows you down. Driving in circles is when your decisions keep bringing you back to the same place of wondering why or what should I do. And that's where people live most of the time. Year after year, the same excuses, the same fears, the same habits, the same conversations, the same bank account, the same frustrations, different year, same story. And then they wonder why nothing in their life changes. Well, let me tell you something that maybe will sting a little bit. Motion is not the same as progress. You could be busy every day still to be going nowhere. You can answer emails, take meetings, have a full calendar, scroll social media, watch videos, listen to podcasts, attend conferences, and still be exactly where you were 12 months ago. Why do you think that is? Because activity doesn't create results. Direction creates results. Think about that for a minute. That's worth repeating, right? Direction creates results. A car driving 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction is getting further away from its destination. And actually, I can tell you, I have done that. You ever get off going one direction on the highway and you go into a rest stop or a truck stop, and you get back on and you're confused. Maybe it's late in the evening, early in the morning, and you go the wrong way. And then 20 or 30 miles down the road, you realize, oh my God, I went the wrong way. If you say it hasn't happened, I'm sure it's happened somewhere. It doesn't get you closer. And, I see this kind of behavior a lot. People are working harder than ever, and yet somehow they're getting further away from their goals, 20, 30, 40 miles in the wrong direction. Why? Because they're chasing distractions instead of their priorities. They're focused on what's urgent instead of what's important. They're reacting instead of leading. They're surviving instead of building. And the longer they do that, the harder it becomes to recognize, because now you're getting that self-satisfaction from something you're doing, because the busyness feels productive for some reason. But busyness is often just a sophisticated form of avoidance. I've talked to a lot of people. I've coached a lot of people, and I've been on thousands of coaching calls over the years, from residential real estate to life coaching to multifamily coaching. And, there's a lot of avoidance out there. Here, here's the thing I can never figure out. Today, you make a commitment for a year that you're going to join coaching and you're going to work that program for a year so that you get better results, so that it moves your business forward. And what happens? 4 months, 5 months, 6 months into coaching, you decide, wow, I'm busy somewhere else in my life, or I have another distraction, and coaching goes to the back burner. Your income runs lower. Coaching goes to the burner when you need it the most. It's just people avoiding accountability. It's avoiding risk. It's avoiding growth. Here's the reality. People who create extraordinary results don't necessarily work more. They spend more time on the right things. They're more accountable. They make commitments and keep them. They know where they're going. They know what matters and what's most important. They know what to ignore, what to say no to. Can you say no? Are you somebody who says no more often than yes? You really need to learn how to do that in your life, because our time is really important. And it's funny because I'm talking about this morning, and I'm actually thinking, maybe I need to spend a little bit more time saying no more often. And then there's everybody's got advice for you. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody else has got a shortcut. There's always that armchair coach, right? The guy who watches the football game or the hockey game, and they can say, oh, coach, why didn't you do this? Or put this guy in. Everybody else has got a right answer. I do it too. I mean, I'll look at somebody else's business from the outside and I'll say, wow, you should be doing this, or if you did this, or if you did this. But, from our own perspective, we tend to think that we know what to do. So what should I stop doing? Not me, but you. What should you stop doing? What distractions do you need to let go of? What habits do you need to let go of? What excuses do you need to stop making? Hey, what relationships are you in that are draining your energy? Because every yes to the wrong thing is a no to the right thing. There's that lost opportunity cost, right? How many times do you go do something when you could have been doing something else and you've lost that opportunity? Look at the top performers in any industry. They aren't chasing 20 different opportunities. They're focused on one or two, and they make commitments, and they stay committed to the commitments. They're relentless in pursuing what they want. They're not scattered. They're not concentrated. They're not unconcentrated. They're understanding that greatness requires elimination, not addition. And that's where many people get trapped. Ask yourself these questions. Are you someone who's trapped? Are you someone who's in a season right now that needs to move to a different season? It's just like in multifamily or in single family real estate. When you go in and you are doing a rehab on a project, you're forcing appreciation because you're creating value. Well, what are you doing in your own life to force appreciation, to create more value for you and those around you? More of these people think that the answer is more information, more strategies, and more opportunities, and it's not. It's less noise, less distractions, and less hesitation. Clarity really creates speed. Speed creates momentum, and that's where we want to get, because that's where you want to live, is in momentum. The more momentum you build, the stronger you become. One of the things I really like is that is Tony Robbins talks a lot about changing your commitment and changing your focus, increasing your strategy, right? And so these are things that we need to remember. Once you start moving in the right direction, opportunities begin to appear. Relationships, new relationships begin to form. Your confidence grows. results begin to compound. I'll never forget, I love this comment, results or your confidence begins to grow. I can remember a time in my life being 35 pounds overweight, just hating myself. And, somebody walked up to me and said, "Hey, look, do you want to get back to where you were? What you need to do is you need to start coming to my class." And this was a trainer. And he said, "Come to my class every day. You'll start working out. You'll start losing weight. You'll start to feel better." And, I don't know what it was, but I think we're all faced with defining moments. And that's really what I'm trying to create for you this morning, is a defining moment in your life. But I started going to this guy's class. I started working out. I started losing weight. And before I knew it, I had clarity and I could think better. I made smarter decisions. I stopped driving in circles. I made decisions to stop confusing the activity that I was doing. My decisions were more intentional, because the future doesn't care about how busy you are. The future cares about how you respond and what you're building. It's just like, how do you respond to that season that you're in? And the truth is, you already know what needs to happen next. You already know, you've known for a while, right? And deep inside, you know what you need to change. The challenge isn't lack of knowledge or action. The challenge is to pull over where you're at right now and take a hard look at the direction that you're headed in. Ask yourself and write this down. Am I making progress, or am I just staying busy? Are you moving closer to your goals, or 30 or 40 miles out of the direction? There are a couple of different things there. And one of them changes your life for sure. The decision you make will definitely change your life. The road ahead is wide open, but only if you are headed in the right direction. So listen, before I let you go this morning, I want to invite you to an upcoming webinar that could help you gain the clarity, strategy, and momentum that you need to reach your next level. We're going to be discussing real world wealth, wealth building strategies, wealth building investments, and the mindset required to create lasting success. If you're tired of spinning your wheels, spinning in circles, driving in circles, and you're looking to make more meaningful progress, this is a conversation you're not going to want to miss. So don't wait for the perfect conditions. Stop waiting for another year to pass. Get in the room. We always talk about being in the right room. Well, this is a right room for you. Learn from the people who are doing it. Take what you learn and put it into action. Because action is where the transformation begins. One of my coaching sessions that I do in my Inner Circle program is on execution. How are we executing? How, what is the action that we're taking? So I really would like to see you take some action, move forward. If you're in a season, or you're driving in circles, or you're caught in traffic, you know what? Make a decision to pull over and make some other decisions. This is a defining moment for you this morning. I want you to make a decision to show up at the upcoming webinar. Until next time, I'm Mike Morawski. Keep moving forward and make sure you're headed somewhere worth going. And listen, for those of you who are interested in making a decision, drop a comment, DM me, shoot me an email at mike@mikemorawski.com. Call me personally. Let's see what we can do to be help to you or get you in the room in this webinar this week. Have a great day and a great week, everybody.